Hello there, YouTube. I'm back again with another upload. And yesterday's one was a political one. Today, it's always going to be about Star Wars. Now, in, I think 2012, no. I don't know the exact year, but around 2007, 2012 time is when George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. He sold the whole entire rights and all that so that Disney could create Star Wars films. And that's exactly what they did. From 2015 to 2019, Disney created 5 Star Wars films. Now, they made the Star Wars sequels, and they made Rogue One and Solo. Now, Rogue One was an amazing movie. It's personally in my top 4 of all the Star Wars movies. It's in my top 4. It's a really good movie. You guys should go ahead and watch it. Solo, it's a decent movie. I think it gets a bit too much hate, but I can see why people, I mean, considering that, I think Endgame came out in the same year that Solo came out, it was always going to flop in the box office. But it's a decent movie in my opinion. However, the Star Wars sequels, Episode 7, 8, and 9, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, are just so bad that majority of Star Wars fans, including myself, consider them not to be canon. So, why do people hate the Star Wars sequels so much? Well, I'm gonna give reasons, and hopefully this video makes you understand why the Star Wars sequels are crap. Now, the first reason why is, well, this is more of a personal opinion, but sequels were kind of unnecessary. Now, obviously, George Lucas released 4, 5, and 6 before 1, 2, 3, so 3 was the last movie that George Lucas released. However, 6 is chronologically where George Lucas's timeline ends. Now, the ending scene of Return of the Jedi... I'm sorry, I forgot to put a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert for the whole entire rest of the video, by the way. If you haven't watched any of these movies and you don't want any spoilers, click off this video right now. Okay, now that's that out of the way. So, George Lucas's timeline ends at Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Now, that final scene is Anakin's Force Ghost, Obi-Wan's Force Ghost, and Yoda's Force Ghost looking proudly down at Luke. And Leia, and they are all celebrating because they overthrew the Empire. Now that is such a good way to end not only the original trilogy, but the whole entire saga as a whole. Because it just felt like a nice little wrap-up, you know, the rebellion won in the end, Luke became a Jedi, Anakin gets redeemed. It's just such a good way to end things off. You know, sequels felt a bit unnecessary because the story just felt over there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I feel like when I first heard about the Star Wars sequels coming out, 10 years ago now, funny how time flies by that quickly, I was like, is this really necessary? Do we really need an episode 7, 8, 9? Return of the Jedi just felt like such a good way to end the whole entire saga, you know? So that's more of a personal reason, although I'm sure there are Star Wars fans on the internet or in real life that feel the same way as I do. Okay, the second reason, and this is one that all Star Wars fans can agree to, this is not my opinion, this is a unanimous opinion, Luke's character arc gets absolutely destroyed, in Episode 8. So, in order to explain more about Luke's character arc, we need to go all the way back to episodes 4, 5, and 6. Now, in episode 4, Luke is just a farm boy on Tatooine, you know, just doing chores for his parents, doing farmer stuff. It's then, you know, Obi-Wan, who's been watching him over his childhood years, finds Luke after he got beaten up by some sand people, and, you know, kind of tells Luke, this is very oversimplified, by the way, you know, you need to learn the ways of the Force to become like your father. And originally Luke is like, nah, I can't do this. But then after his Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru die, he's like, you know what, there's nothing left for me here. I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And, you know, he struggles to learn, and this carries on into Episode 5. In Episode 5 is when his proper training starts with Yoda. He's struggling to use the Force. He can't lift the X-Wing out of the water. He can't deal with a lightsaber properly. He just can't do anything, you know? And it's him struggling. George Lucas really put Luke through the mud here. because he is struggling to become a Jedi, and he ultimately fails because Darth Vader absolutely decimates him in a fight. So yeah, he ultimately fails, but he doesn't give up. And in episode 6, we learn a bit more about Luke. He thinks he can redeem Darth Vader. You know, his father, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. Now, Darth Vader is very evil, to say the least. I mean, this guy slaughtered a bunch of rebels, oversaw the Death Star, exploding, Alderaan. It shot a laser into the planet Alderaan, and the planet exploded, killing God knows how many people. I think it was billions. And in episode 3, he slaughtered a bunch of younglings. And yeah, he also ruled, well, he didn't really rule over the galaxy. That was more so Palpatine. But he was a cold-blooded killer. He had no remorse, no empathy. And as Obi-Wan put it, he was more machine than man. Twisted and evil. So, but Luke sees past that. He sees past all that and sees a broken man who lost everything. Because Anakin in episode 3 does lose everything. He loses his wife. He loses his limbs. He loses his ability to breathe properly. He loses, he loses his friends. He loses Obi-Wan. He just loses everything. So Luke looks past the evil, wicked Darth Vader and sees a broken, lost man. And in episode 6, he redeems Darth Vader. So from this, we can tell that Luke's character is someone who never gives up. He perseveres, and he's ultimately compassionate and a kind-hearted human being who doesn't give up on anyone, no matter how evil they go. And Darth Vader went pretty flippin' evil. He went evil. But Luke saw past that and ultimately redeemed him. It's a very touching story. However, in the Star Wars sequels, in 7, 8, and 9, Luke is negative. He's lazy. Well, I wouldn't say lazy, but he's grouchy. He's like almost arrogant, but not kind of arrogant. I wouldn't say arrogant. He's a quitter. He's a pessimist. It's like a completely different character from what we got in 4, 5, and 6, and in 7, 8, 9. He doesn't want to teach Rey the ways of the Force. He's just all around very negative, and this is such a contrast from what we got in 4, 5, and 6. It feels like a completely different character. And in fact, Mark Hamill, the actor who played Luke Skywalker in 4, 5, and 6, and 7, 8, 9, is like, this isn't Luke. This is some other guy. Maybe it's Jake Skywalker. I don't know, but it's not Luke Skywalker. And yes, Mark Hamill did say that. You can look it up on YouTube. So as a result, people just refuse to accept that is Luke. And I don't blame them. No one can change from being so positive and optimistic and seeing the best of people to becoming this negative, pessimistic man. It's just not possible. And considering the fact that Darth Vader got redeemed by Luke, Luke was able to redeem Darth Vader, who is arguably one of the most evil Star Wars characters of all time, and he turns into this negative, pessimistic man who couldn't even save his own nephew from turning to the dark side because he had a bad dream, just makes no sense. It's unbelievable. You just can't believe it, which is one of the reasons why people consider the Star Wars sequels to be so bad and not canon, like myself, because Luke's character arc just gets completely demolished, destroyed, gone, dusted with. Another reason why is because the sequels themselves are just objectively terrible. I mean, the plot makes no sense. There's multiple plot holes. I'm not gonna go into too much detail because I just don't like talking about the sequels. Like, I hate going into detail about them. I mean, like, Finn's character arc, in episode 7, it looks like Finn is going to become the Jedi, but then it goes to Rey, who's a complete Mary Sue, by the way. She's able to do everything first try. Like, somehow she's able to use Force Lightning? Like, what? It makes no sense. And then Kylo Ren's character gets completely screwed. In episode 7, he's like this completely cold-blooded Sith killer, almost like Darth Vader. But then he somehow loses in a lightsaber duel to someone who's never even touched a lightsaber. Like, do you guys see what I'm getting at? It makes no sense. And in The Last Jedi, Finn is about to sacrifice his life to save the rebellion, and they're called the Resistance, actually. And his lover, Rose, is like, no, don't do this. And she kicks him out the way, almost killing him, almost risking her own life, and goes on a random speech about love. What the actual hell? And episode 9, just Palpatine comes back, which, in episode 6, when Darth Vader redeems himself, he throws Palpatine down the reactor shaft of the Death Star, which explodes, and then the Death Star itself explodes. So if Palpatine somehow survived that, he'd be floating in space. And no one is surviving that, not even Palpatine. So how the hell is he able to come back in episode 9? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's unbelievable. It's stupid. It's childlike. It's unbelievable. It just makes no sense. So, and the plot holes are just completely outrageous. Like how is Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, able to come back like that? We don't see any of his stuff in the original or the prequels. It just makes no sense. It just doesn't work. The story doesn't work. And not to mention, when the sequels came out, everyone was excited to see Han, Luke, and Leia on screen. This is another reason. This is reason 4 why the sequels are so bad and not canon. Everyone wanted to see Han, Luke, and Leia on screen together. Well, guess what? In episode 7, Han Solo dies, which is arguably, just so bad. And in episode 8, Leia somehow survives floating in space. And we obviously discussed, Luke's character getting demolished. So everyone was just disappointed. And I don't blame them. It's terrible. So that's reason 4. And reason 5 is just because I kind of mentioned this earlier. Rey is a complete Mary Sue. Now, I'm going to compare Luke to Rey. I feel like I'm committing a major sin here, but I'm going to compare Luke to Rey. So Luke in episode 5, he can't use the Force, he can't deal with a lightsaber, he can't save his friends, he can't do anything. Rey in episode 7 picks up a lightsaber for the first time in her life and beats Kylo Ren. What? It just makes no sense. No one is gonna pick up a lightsaber duel. Oh my days, why can't I speak? No one is gonna pick up a lightsaber and instantly deal with it and beat someone with it. No one is gonna do that. You need training. Even minimal training could work, but no training, no, it doesn't work. In episode 8, she somehow learns to use the Force by Luke, even though she barely even got taught, from what I remember. Again, it just makes no sense. Yoda, who's arguably one of the most powerful Force users, taught Luke in episode 5. Luke still could use the Force, so how the hell is Luke teaching Rey how to use the Force? It just makes no sense. And then, in episode 9, she's able to use Force lightning? Huh? What? How? It just makes no sense. Oh yeah, going back to the plot hole thing, Rey is Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter, which I don't even know how that works. But like I was saying, going back to my original point about Rey being complete Mary Sue, she's able to do everything perfectly on her first try. No one wants to see that. We want to see characters struggle and learn, because when they actually are able to succeed, the fact that they struggled to do it makes it all the better. If they're just going to be Mary Sue, it's just what's the point? So yeah, those are the reasons why the Star Wars sequels are terrible and are not canon. George Lucas himself doesn't even consider them canon. That's another reason. Reason 6. George Lucas does not consider them canon. George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars, and while he does not currently have the right to Star Wars, he created it. So anything that he says is canon or not, is canon or not. And he said the Star Wars sequels are not canon to his timeline. There you go. That's all the evidence you need. The Star Wars sequels are terrible movies. They are not canon, and hopefully this video will make you understand. I am sorry for the fact that I cannot speak. I don't know why that is. Sometimes I stutter. Sometimes I say stuff that I don't actually mean to say. It just, I'm working on it. Trust me, I'm working on it. But anyway, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow for a political video. Thank you for your support, guys, by the way. I really do appreciate it. Have a good day.